I'm a shareholder in a group that actually has 3 different companies, and all of them have the same goal: to wake up the recruitment industry, to show the market, the region, companies, and candidates that there's a different way of doing recruitment in technology, in training, and with talent. So we have Good Call, which is a recruitment company using social media, mobile apps, and technology. We have Recruitment Academy, which is a training company that shows people how to do sourcing and recruiting in a modern way, like we do in Good Call. And we have Datacruit, which is a software company that makes recruitment software for companies that want to track their recruitment process and candidates. And all 3 of them are at the cutting edge of what people believe is the normal case for recruitment. It's going well. We're not done with any of them, and they still have all a long ways to go, but it's been a really good ride so far. Yes, we moved there when I was 6 years old. I was born in Los Angeles, and my parents didn't think that was a great place to raise children, and therefore they decided to move somewhere else. But they did it by closing their eyes, putting their hand on a map and pressing, and they landed on Colorado, and that's how they chose Colorado. We traveled around the States quite a lot, yes. Almost every summer we took some trip. My dad and my mom I didn't see all 50 states, I have to say, but I saw a lot of them, and I saw a lot of the important American monuments. My dad had traveled a lot in Europe before I was born, and they tried to take us around the US as much as possible. So, I found high school extremely easy. I was lucky in many ways, but when I got to college in Vermont, it was extremely hard. And I had never had to really work hard, and this surprised me. And after my first year, my grades sucked, to be very clear. And my father gave me a very simple option: either improve the grades or come back home and go to a state school, or take a break and go sort it out. And he recommended, go do something, live, work. So I said, I'll go, and I'll go to Europe. We had a family friend who lived in Germany, and I stayed with him for the first half a year, just as a place to base myself and to learn how to live and work on my own, and basically how to work hard. I needed to kick my own butt, and it worked. What actually happened is I thought I would work there and learn how to support myself. The reality was that this is 1996, so it's going back 22 years. I'm showing my age now. In 1996, like now, Germany still had a very high unemployment rate. So to get a work permit, I had to do something better than a German. I was 19. I couldn't do much of anything, except I could ski. So I figured out that I could be a ski instructor, but being a ski instructor wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, because everyone that I called said, do you have your ski instructor training? I said, no. They said, well, you have to get one. And each license is only valid for one country. So I found out that Austria has the most ski schools. So I called about 60 ski schools in Austria, and they all said, are you here? Do you have your training? No. So then I traveled to Austria, based myself out of 2 or 3 different cities at a time, and would visit 10 to 15 ski schools per day. Until I happened upon one little ski school in Saalbach-Hinterglemm called Skischule Zink, who amazingly didn't mind my horrible, awful German, and said he would give me a job. He would organize a work permit for me if I got my ski instructor training, which was happening the following week in Kaprun. And I went there and I amazingly completed it in Austrian German. Didn't realize how different it was until I got to that. And 4 or 5 months later, I went back to Germany, still not realizing that I could speak German until I arrived back in northern Germany, where I had lived before in Münster, and I could understand everything they said. Absolutely everything, because they spoke the Hochdeutsch, the pure Deutsch. And I spoke Austrian German, which was much more difficult to say, understand, and use. And the normal German was easy, and all of a sudden I spoke German. Luckily for me, I had already gone from Colorado to Vermont, which I thought would be kind of different, but actually they're very similar, even though one's on the East Coast and one's, many would say, the West. But going further east to Europe, it was a change. Sometimes I got homesick, but not enough to ever cause me to rethink anything. And I found that by traveling, because I traveled around Germany quite a lot, and then into Austria. On my way to Austria, I came to Czech Republic, which I'll be happy to tell you about later, but there was a reason that I came here. And I think by moving, I kind of kept myself fresh. I think if I would have sat in one place for 6 months and not moved, I would probably be wondering, should I go back to the States? But I kept moving, and so I didn't notice it as much. Good. My great-grandmother was Czech.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I came here initially. When I grew up, I used to hear my father talk about Czechoslovakia, and my great-grandma Králova should have been, of course, but we called her great-grandma Král. So I had family here, and I wanted to come here. So for me, it wasn't, well, it was different, of course. Culture-wise, of course, it was different. But not massively different than, say, in parts of Austria or in other countries I visited. And I still felt like I had a connection with the people because my great-grandmother was Czech, as was my great-grandfather. People were a little bit more closed until I got to know them, but I found that in most of Europe, that the people were a little bit more closed. Maybe only Holland was a bit different, but Germany was the same, Austria was the same, Czech Republic was the same. It wasn't a major shock to me. Something weird. Look, in the 90s and in the early 2000s, many expats, we would have what were called bad check days. And a bad check day is when you went to the post office, for example. That almost guaranteed a bad check day because you just got frustrated with the lack of interest in doing anything or helping someone. But though that's changed quite a lot. I even go to a post office near where I work, and there's kind of young people that are relatively helpful. And I think that the willingness to try and to change and to consider other ideas, it's changed a lot in the last 15 years. So now, no, I don't think there's much that I would call strange. I like life here. I think that the balance of work, things to do outside of work, public infrastructure, transport, services, people. Yeah, you have jerks in every city. I've been to a lot of cities around the world, and there's people who are mean and not helpful all over. Some people would say, well, Czech Republic has more. I don't know, maybe it does, but I don't think it does. I find that the whole package is a really, really nice place to live. And now, when somebody says to me, well, Czech Republic, okay, so that's Eastern Europe, what's it like to live there? And I tell them, actually, you could say that 5 or 10 years ago, but today, Prague has every single service and amenity available, the same as every other Western European capital around. Every other global capital. We have it all now. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get. Sometimes it might be a little bit more expensive. Sometimes you might need to get it sent via Amazon or something. But you have access to everything that we do in any other city in the world. It's nice. Firstly, it will be how they present themselves, even on the piece of paper, on the CV. An American, firstly, would probably try and put everything on one page because that's how we're taught. It has to be on one page, otherwise they'll rip it up. That's not always true. Secondly, an American will usually talk about themselves and how wonderful they are on the CV because that's partly what we're taught to do. You know, be confident in yourself, make sure that they know what you've done well, especially on the paper when you're applying for a job. And typically on a Czech CV, it's a little bit more modest. When I consult people on writing CVs, one of the first things I tell them to do is make sure you break down each job into responsibilities and achievements, because most Czech people don't, and that's just natural. I find Czech people to be much more humble and modest, to a fault sometimes, because finding salespeople here for a long time was very difficult, because to sell you have to sell yourself. So when you have a person come in, then it's also a challenge if you're looking for a Czech salesperson, because they need to sell you themselves first. And that can be a challenge if you're not raised in a society that looks positively upon somebody who's confident and outgoing and the center of things and can sell themselves. If it's looked at negatively, then you're not going to have a lot of salespeople. Versus the States, where individuality is promoted and encouraged from a baby, school age and beyond, then it's quite easy for somebody to come in and say, I can do that job. And I say, well, have you ever done the job before? Nope, but I'm confident I can do it. Okay, Mr. American, let's see. And to the Czech, I say, can you do this job? I don't know. Okay, but you have all the skills. I know, but I've never done it. But I think you could. Do you think you could? I don't know. If you think I can, maybe. So, two kind of extremes. I wouldn't mind in the middle, and what I found in the past 10 years, there's more and more people in the middle. Americans who come here and who've been here for a few years also start to move towards the middle. And Czechs who've been growing up in a more cosmopolitan environment in Prague and working in companies, they also start to move to the middle a little bit more and have some level of strong, healthy self-confidence. I luckily found a job here before I fully moved here. I was looking at London, Amsterdam, and Prague, and I interviewed with Citibank in all three, but just for an internship, for a 3-month internship. I found London to be wonderful and amazing and huge, but already kind of done. I found Amsterdam to be fantastic and wonderful people, but it was fully Western Europe. And I found Prague to still be raw in 1999. Still so much to do here. So for me, the only shot I got a 3-month internship at Citibank, which it wasn't easy, but it wasn't difficult. I didn't have to go through the 6 rounds that other people went, but I also didn't have a job. Yeah, I had a 3-month, I didn't even have a contract. They paid me in cash into my hand for the first 3 months. My first real job after that, it was more, once again, using kind of the confidence that I had built up and the languages that I had and the pure abilities that I had developed more in high school and college, actually, of talking to people and connecting with them, that got me my other jobs. I haven't started a business. I've been a shareholder and an investor in a couple businesses. I have my own živnostenský list, but I wouldn't call that starting a classic business. But being an investor, being a shareholder as an American, it's not completely straightforward either. You still have to jump through a lot of hoops, and I still have to do lots of reporting back home in the States because of that. But let's not get into that. Mr. Trump, you hear that? I'm fine. IRS, leave me alone, please. Never. I miss people and I miss things about the U.S. But when I left school, actually the CIA recruited me, and it was pretty cool. I interviewed 3 rounds with the CIA, but they wanted me to stay in the States for at least 2 years. And I asked them, could I stay a shorter period of time before I left? It wasn't that I disliked America, and it's still not that I disliked America, but I just wanted to see the world. I had left when I was 19, And CIA told me I needed to stay at least 18 months, and then they would send me on an assignment to some strange corner of the world. And I said no. I want to go now. I want to explore the world now. And actually, most of my classmates from Middlebury, they were all going to investment banking, but they were kind of losing that first year or two of their life because most of them worked 80 to 100 hours a week. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be in Europe where I saw a better work-life balance. But I decided to do banking in Europe where I thought it would be better. And I never regretted it, and I still haven't. I tend to regret things that I do more than things I don't do. But in this case, as I mentioned before, the life is wonderful. No way. Yes, I would encourage your classmates to be proactive in whatever you do, and not to wait around for somebody to do it for you, or a website, or a company, or a service, or an app to solve whatever situation you want. Whether that's finding a job or getting advice, I highly recommend getting out there, picking up the phone, sending an email, going on LinkedIn or someplace else, and if you want a job, if you want to work somewhere, if you want to get some recommendation, ask. Don't wait for somebody else to do it for you. If you do that, you start to stand out. And I can tell you, from my perspective, when I have young people who approach me and say, I have an idea, can I talk to you? Would you meet with me? I'm looking for this, I need some advice, would you have 15 minutes? I always say yes, because I have a lot of respect for somebody who does things like that, and not enough people do that nowadays. I see that the lack of perseverance, the ability to kind of drive hard even during tough times, it's not as high as I think it should be. The World Economic Forum came out with their top 10 skills needed by 2020 compared to 2015. And the top 3 were complex problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity, which makes sense. They're absolutely valid. But if you don't have perseverance in those 3 and in your life and job, none of it will matter. And that's what I see is probably lacking most, that I'd like to see a little bit more of. Because I see too many people kind of stopping halfway and thinking, I'll do it differently. No, I'll do it. And the numbers back this up. In the States, in Germany, here, in Asia, number of doctors, for example, has been dropping. Number of people going to medical school. Instead, they choose to be a hygienic assistant or a doctor's assistant because it's easier and faster and quicker, and they can change later if they want. Because actually going to medical school, it's a huge investment, and you'll need to persevere through 5 or 7 years of it. And so the number of doctors is dropping rapidly. That's very worrying. So perseverance and being proactive and going for what you want. Please. Please. Technology related. It will somehow be technology related. But whether it will be a developer or not, I don't know. I think the most interesting people will be those who have knowledge of technology, and maybe they know how to, they understand coding, but they're probably more at an intellectual level touching on robotics or automation or AI, and they can use their knowledge, maybe even with a business mind, to do business, to close deals, to help on the projects, to help in project management. People with those diverse skills will be the most successful, no question. Doing a sort of hyper micro focus on one area, it'll still be possible like now, but most companies, they want the hybrid. They want these strange people that can code, but also communicate, which 10 years ago you didn't need. Nowadays, I have companies asking me for Java developers who can communicate with human beings, which is a lot harder than it used to be. And sometimes they have to do it in real life and with clients. And in the future, if you have technical knowledge, if you're also pushing on the border of new technology and you can communicate with people talk to people, sell, present, and you have technical knowledge, you'll have a wonderful job and career.